We're almost halfway through 2023 Season 4 and the FIA Formula 4 Regional Esports Tour lands up here at Brands Hatch. We're bound to be in for an entertaining race here in the European North region, and welcome along to RaceSpotTV for the next 30 minutes or so as we get underway and reach the halfway mark of this final season of the calendar year. It's Arjuna Kankipati alongside Will Chadwick as we roll our way in towards Will, what I know you're going to say is definitely not the best track in the UK, because that was where we went at week 1 back at Alton Park.
You read me so well, Arjuna, but it's not a bad track indeed, and it's very special to be driving here at the GP Loop because it's not used much with inside UK racing or general track days, so it's a very special layout for our drivers here tonight.
And, you know, that's not a bad point. I do really enjoy the way that the longer lap runs. Of course, the Indy layout cuts off effectively half the lap that you don't need to take into account. These drivers have been for a rather interesting experience so far in the first half of the campaign. Knockhill, Spa, Rodskogen, Zolder, and now Brands Hatch. And looking at the second half of the season, a couple more returns to the UK shores, but this is the fascinating thing about these regions, is that will they always focus on the track specific to that region? And really, there are some of the best tracks in the world to run our way through for 12 weeks.
I would absolutely agree with that. Looking at the track list right now, it just is a fantastic layout. Of course, I'm a little bit biased, you know, being from England myself, but circuits like Zandvoort, the new scan of Zandvoort on iRacing is fantastic, and I'm sure the drivers competing in that will really enjoy it when they get to that round.
Haven't gotten the chance to see how it fares out in a race just yet here on the sim. Going to be curious to see how it goes when maybe we see that racing. 4 regions the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour is broken up into, but you can race across of any of them. There's no divisions across of the countries. Instead, like I said, about providing focus for the tracks, but also fixed time slots in each of the time zones. If you're crazy enough, you could do 32 races a week. I don't think anyone's necessarily that brave or that crazy. And it's open to anyone with a non-rookie license. Will, this is great to allow drivers new to iRacing an opportunity to week in and week out find consistent competition.
Absolutely, and just looking through some of the names and the level of competition we've got this evening looks really, really good. Can't wait to see how it pans out.
And so let's take a look at the cars out there just finishing up their qualifying session. It's Ted Bradbury that's currently on top with a 121, a 261. Here's Luca Becker in a stealth black number 4 that's going to run his way to the line. Don't forget, you'll be able to follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to timing.RaceSpotTV for the next 30 minutes or so. Becker jumps up into 5th spot. No one else really out there with times to improve upon, at least for the time being. Will, this is a track which is relatively high commitment and therefore difficult to sometimes get a qualifying lap under your belt.
Massively high commitment, and something that we need to take into account is the new update to gravel in iRacing. May have been touched on this season, but often it wasn't something we tended to look at too much. But now if you catch the gravel even very slightly, you end up getting a massive slowdown, and at places like Turn 1 that can be a real issue.
And counter to that, though, the grass may be a little bit more controllable than we've seen in recent past as well. You can see the intervals on the left side of the screen if you're curious. A big margin between Bradbury and the rest of the field, and then smaller margins behind that. It's a track where draft can play a significant factor, but could we see Bradbury break away? Because, Will, that's not an insignificant margin up towards the front.
Well, the FIA Esports driver for Altus Esports, clearly showing his pace. Of course, got quite a wealth of experience with inside sim racing and also the real world, and it's not surprising to see him that far ahead, I guess. However, the draft in this car is so powerful, and if I know anything about this car, it always produces good racing.
I think we're in for a fun one. There's a 2/10 or so improvement from Luca Becker. Should be enough to jump him to the outside of the front row indeed. And as we get ready to go then with 15 seconds left on the clock, it's standing start time to focus on. Will, you mentioned the pedigree of Bradbury competing in that British Formula 4 Esports Championship. What should we expect, though, from these machines once we go racing? Because this track, we talked about the tight confines. Where are the passing opportunities going to be?
Passing can be done into Turn 1 pretty easily with a lunge. Turn 2 is also quite a good spot, especially if you can compromise the run of your car down the first turn and There's a lot of turns really here that you can get a good move done.
We're expecting plenty of fighting. Let's see how they'll line up, though, and it's a big margin as expected, though. After that qualifying session comes to a close, half a second between Ted Bradbury and Luca Becker on the front row, while Ben Franklin and then Elliot Pugh will share row number 2. Ryan James Ward is then alongside Jim Garrity, while rolling from 7th is going to be Brandon Nagelvort. Istok Vreco will be alongside. Stephen Elson, Dylan Freckleton make up the rest of the top 10. 1.5 seconds back to the edge of those front 5 rows. Peter de Hoos and then Simon Gabriel, 11th and 12th positions, with 13th seeing Dietrich Marsman, David Onalzo alongside. Guy Robertson and then Sebastian Schmidt in some tribute liveries. On 15th and 16th positions, Joey Zarco and then Harry Hickton, the first drivers with no time on the board, but still plenty of drivers to roll from the back. Mark McFarquhar, Nico Kuru, Alex Bailey, Timo Olfkick, and then Aaron Woolcock will round out the 23 cars that will do battle, and hopefully some less butchering of the names when we go racing. That's a monster field, though, Will, that's getting ready to launch into turn number 1.
23 cars is a good field, Arjuna, and it'll be interesting to see how people fare into turn 1, like you say, because this car's fairly easy to launch. You can preload the clutch a bit, which helps. Some cars it's not possible now these days on iRacing, and I think we'll see a fairly consistent start, so don't expect many movers off the line, but as we get into turn 1, I'm sure we'll have some battling. It's
a pretty undulating track as well. Going to be interesting to see how much commitment the drivers have on this first time by. Down in towards turn number 1. There's gravel on the outside to greet you if you're a little bit too wide. Also needs to be thought about when you think about a lunge around the outside. They're being held for quite a while on this grid, but the 2-minute timer finally comes to a close. A couple of drivers missing from their grid formations. Let's see where it stacks up the rest of the drivers. Engines roar at Brands Hatch. We're ready to go for the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour, and it's a great start from Luca Becker alongside Ted Bradbury, but the Altus Esports machine will cut the line off down into the opening corner. Behind, 3rd and 4th positions getting single-filed momentarily, but rising up the hill into turn number 2. Almost 3 wide they go, but safely. All 22 of the Formula 4 machines will navigate their way through the opening couple of corners.
Pretty nicely done by our initial drivers. Bradbury feeling the need to go defensive and will go defensive into turn number 4. Becker to the outside, but unable to get any sort of run. So a good opening start for the front of this field, and nice to see that it's ended up pretty clean.
So there is a driver that's taken a tow back to pit lane, but not because of an issue at the start, so ignore the timing that you see on the left side. It's 4 at the front, in towards the back straightaway, around the outside. Can Elliot Pugh make it work on Brent Franklin? He'll almost get chopped up into the grass. Ted Bradbury got a little bit askew, working his way through the first of the right-handers, and now down the hill into the compression. Another car goes around. Garrity gets mixed up with some drama.
Garrity and Freckleton look to have had a collision there on the exit. Very easy to do if you can tap a few wheels, but Bradbury feeling the need to go pretty defensive early on. Of course, we did speak about how powerful that tow can be.
Looking rearwards over the shoulder of the Altus Esports car, clips a bit of the grass on the run in toward the final corner, but now builds the momentum, and look at how the tow brings Luca Becker towards the race lead. 1 lap complete. It's expected to be 15 laps of this around the outside. Luca Becker doesn't look to try and commit, but will try and switch it back as they climb up into turn number 2.
Going to have the inside line here pretty clear for Becker. Will he go long on the brakes? Going to keep it pretty controlled and actually struggle to get an exit, and I don't think he's going to be able to get that move done.
It's allowed an opportunity as well as Ben Franklin and Elliot Pugh also switch around for what we're seeing, just momentum off of corners, allowing the opportunities. Becker now is going to get the move done as Bradbury tries to run wide and carry the momentum onto the back straightaway. They're 2 by 2 for the race lead. You've got Ryan James Ward with them. Gaggle closing behind as well. It's not just the 5 at the front. The draft very much keeping everyone together after a big gaggle in qualifying, saw the margin split wide from Luca Becker. Here comes Ben Franklin.
Franklin going to try up the inside and does it pretty nicely in the Alpine livery. He's going to be trying to continue to catch Bradbury and put him under pressure, because if we let this gap kind of separate themselves between Bradbury and, I don't know what's going on in the background. That
was Luca Becker, just for a moment ran wide, but enough to drop him behind Ryan James Ward to the tail end of the top 5, and now hoping to close once again. Will, you've experienced many a frenetic race. As Ryan James Ward almost in the grass. What must be going through the driver's mind right now with the heart rates getting elevated?
keep it clean, keep your nose clean. It's something I speak to myself about in PESC and other competitions, especially this F4. You want to keep your nose clean and try and keep in that draft and not pick up any early wing damage, especially in this car. It can be truly crippling to its performance.
They are so reliant on the aero. Let's go back to the start and pick up what happened to Timur Olivok. Unfortunately, just bundled wide. Fortunately, you can run yourself a little wide through there. It's just not always the preferred line. Then Gian Garrity, I think, actually lost the rear end by themselves, and Dylan Freckleton in the smoke had nowhere to really go. Take another look at this one.
Yeah, so as you can see, coming through the section of the GP loop, and we're going to look for a car ahead. Yeah, bit of smoke, and then yeah, you're just trying to guess where the car's going, and unfortunately for Freckleton, there's not much he could have done there.
And a driver that we've seen many a time on RaceSpotTV as an independent driver, put up some impressive performances, excuse me. Day done for Dylan Freckleton, although has left the pit lane and is out there after a 90-second tow back to the lane and rolls around now in 20th position. Gian Garrity is also back there after leaving the pit lane, so a couple of cars are still pushing around. I want to go back and pick up as the drivers work their way to the line to close out the third lap. Luca Becker alongside up in towards that very tight corner. I've got to say, we were talking about grass and gravel changes earlier, Will. That could have been a lot more dramatic.
Certainly could have been. It's a very, very hard corner to go side by side. I always remember any competitions I've done around this place, it's almost like a crash or pass maneuver if you're going to stick the nose there. And as you can see, it clearly cost our kind of second group quite a lot of time. It looks like Ben Franklin's maybe had an issue as well.
Yeah, what's happened here? Not sure if that was something we missed while we were taking a look at the focus on the replay, but down to fifth, not out of drafting range. Unfortunately, with the car not looking too damaged, I think that will be the most important thing. Oh, down into turn one. Elliott Pugh looks to the inside. It's just a big wiggle, a step out there as there's a puff of smoke. Another car went around, totally unrelated.
It looks like maybe Freckleton's car. It looks a little bit like his livery maybe coming back. And as you can see, just the dive from Pugh you reach that gravel now in the recent update, it's like a handbrake.
And you just saw as well, fortunately didn't carry him wide into the tyre wall and the arm code that sometimes you would see with the previous gravel model. I guess that's the difference, is you're not going to run into the wall, but you'll lose a whole bunch of momentum. Elliott Pugh, that move has potentially allowed Ted Bradbury to break the draft. 1.7 seconds clear is the Altus Esports number 2 at the line. And diving down through turn one in towards Druids once more. It's only 6 minutes complete, but Bradbury looks comfortable.
Looks very comfortable indeed, and it was kind of part of his plan, I imagine. Just make the cars behind fight, because you're not going to break the draft just by hot lapping in front of someone, because it's just so intense. And by making everyone go side by side behind him, he stirred up a little bit of carnage, and that was just able to get him that gap to pull away. Yeah,
because you can see plenty of drivers behind struggling to be able to pull similar sort of margins. Here's the battle for 7th as Simone Gabriel, as Peter de Hust now looking to the outside, initially switches it back to the inside in that number 12, and as they work their way at the end of the back straightaway in through Hawthorns, position held for the time being, but it's actually 4 other cars in line behind, and an even bigger gaggle tucked up behind Joey Zarkos in 12th position. This gaggle goes all the way back to 18th.
Yeah, and that's some of the fun racing that you get here in this FIA Formula 4, newly named on iRacing. That's up recently. A little bit of blinking for the car behind. However, yeah, as you can see, it's really easy to keep nice and close and maybe go for a little bit of drifting action as Ryan James Ward figures out how it can be quite easy to move a little wide.
I mean, he did that once before, didn't he? Just got away with it. This time actually lost out a bit, but there's so much commitment. This is what this track with this car in particular brings, and still have a bit of a margin to those behind, but as you take a look at the replay, it's, I think, on the power down where Ryan James Ward just thought, you know what, let me throttle up and see where I can go. Runs wide once again in the live pictures, but you can just see how much he's pushing.
And that's a Guild Esports livery, one of the newest teams to sim racing, or one of the sim racing sort of world. And as you can see there, just as you see from like the T camera perspective, just getting a little bit of push, maybe a tiny bit of dirty air, and unfortunately goes wide.
And that's Stephen Elson down at Surtees that now has to wait an age as the train that we were watching with Joey Zarkos at the front all make their way on through. So a couple of drivers having various sorts of issues. Also just Elson that had some drama. There was a moment for Aaron Woolcock as well, but back up towards Elliott Pugh, Ryan James Ward sandwiching Luca Becker. Guild Esports represented in that British Formula 4 Esports Championship, of course. David Beckham's esports team as he makes his way into our little world of sim racing as well.
Yeah, and it's great to see new names into the sim racing industry. It always brings more attention that we like to see into our little niche hobby that we all tend to partake in every now and then. On board, there you go, there you can see it, and there's so much time lost in just doing that. That's 2, 3, 4 tenths of a second that you can lose just by running wide, and it's something that the old patches it wasn't too much of an issue, but now it's a massive issue.
He almost runs wide once again in a 20-minute race. You wouldn't expect the track limits and drive-through penalties to come into play, but for Ryan James Ward that might end up being a factor. As that was Harry Hickton that's lost it. And that's, I think, into the wall. I'm not sure if he's managed to keep it. Goodness. Oh! And then all the hard work for naught.
That was a rather large incident there on the back straight, and the 13 might have had damage or some sort of issue from that. But yeah, very interesting to see if he touched the wall or not. I would imagine he maybe clouded it a little bit, but potentially we'll get to have a look here. So coming through turn number 3, often to use a lot of that exit. It's a bit of a grass area, but once you dip a wheel, that probably would have damaged the car anyway, but as you saw after the rejoin, fortunately got quite a lot of contact, really destroying his day.
I'm not sure, I couldn't quite pick up the number when we were watching the live shot, but wasn't quite sure who was the driver that got tangled up with. Unfortunate, all things considered. 3 seconds, though, at the front now as we are basically halfway through this 20-minute dash. It is still Ted Bradbury that leads from Elliott Pugh, Luca Becker, and Ryan James Ward, who increasingly now are building up a buffer to Ben Franklin and to Brandon Nagelvoort, while Simona Gabriel, Peter de Hus, and then Joey Zarkos and Alex Bailey make up the rest of the top 10 as they run. Track map shows just how separated they've gotten after even just 10 minutes of racing.
Yeah, and it shows the prowess of Bradbury really in this situation. Drove this car for many years on the service and is doing very, very well in the real world. Might see him in single-seaters soon. And yeah, I mean, once you've got that sort of lead, you can just see the precision of the lines that he's taking and how close he's running it to the track limits. It really shows you what you need to do if you want to perform at the top level.
Alex Bailey, Joey Zarkos, they're fighting for 9th and 10th position. That top level, though, is of course something where drivers are building up to. This FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour is all about having the opportunity for anyone with a non-rookie license to go racing and find, well, incredible competition. I heard a puff of smoke in the background, and it's David Onazol and Guy Robertson that come together. And both of them slowly making their way out of the gravel, but fortunately back out onto track.
Yeah, and it looks to have been another sort of collision with drivers just kind of getting tangled up at high speed. It's really unfortunate to see that sort of incident.
But it's this type of close racing in this type of car where you develop your racecraft. It's what it's meant to be all about. It's now 3 for 9th position. Looking to the outside with more contact. Joey Zarkos and Alex Bailey get turned on one another. Bailey's in the wall. Zarkos down through turn number 1, but a damaged front wing to show for it.
That's such a shame. Alex Bailey was one of our biggest gainers in the field. I think he was up maybe 12, 13 positions from where he started, and that's really unfortunate to see that incident.
I'll have to grab a look at a handful of replays, it sounds like. So let's begin by taking a look at Robertson and that incident they had with Onazol. So first it's safely through the right-hander at Hawthorns, and as they just work towards Westfield, a bit clumsy between the two of them.
Just looking to maybe slot in before the start of the corner. We'll get another angle here. Watch the 13 car. So it's clear that the white car on the outside's got the run. And I don't know, it's a bit of an odd one. Obviously, you're wanting to get back onto the racing line to make the corner as wide as possible to carry as much speed. But it just looks pretty misjudged there from the 13. And it's unfortunately caused an incident.
And we'll get a good shot, I think, of just the aftermath of the crash there for Alex Bailey, who was the only one to lose out. But again, it's just the draft that builds it up. In the live pictures, Elliott Pugh and Luca Becker are going to be going side by side. Becker slides through to second, but at least momentarily, it's just That draft, it's the overspeed into the outside of turn one, unfortunate. Swap around hasn't just happened yet though. Pugh and now Ryan James Ward trying to work together. Bully Becker down to fourth.
We saw Ward make quite a few little mistakes, but he's been able to keep on to the toe and has now got into the third position, into our podium positions this evening. Going to be chasing after your number one car of Elliott Pugh in the coming laps.
We have, of course, the fact that the margin up front has grown. These drivers do have some traffic to potentially run their way into. Draft could help out that number one machine, but we've seen Ward make a handful of mistakes. What does Luca Becker still have to fight? All those little battles behind, by the way, somewhat now dying down. Joey Zarkos had to, of course, come down to pit lane. He's still on the leading lap, remarkably, but it's only really these three drivers, Ben Franklin, Brandon Nagelvoort, and then Simona Gabriel and Peter de Hus that are fighting out there on track. 122.049 last time by from Ted Bradbury becomes a 121.5 with a lack of traffic. What's it going to be for these three drivers? Well, the best of them with all the fighting, 122.7. They lost 1.2 seconds on that lap alone.
Yeah, on that lap alone, and as you see though, Pugh on the exit there just dipped a wheel in the gravel, and that's cost him a couple tenths of a second and now makes him increasingly more vulnerable to Ward. Ward's going to try and get a run through turn 3, and if he's able to get enough of a slingshot, he might be able to send it down the inside. Unfortunately though, getting onto that bit of that real grass section after the artificial and losing a bit of time.
The grass model, Will, something that I haven't yet had the privilege of trying myself out yet, by which I mean I've done some laps and I've either died or stayed on track. So I haven't really experienced what it's like to be racing with as Ward and Pugh just juking back and forth. How does it change your perception now, though, of how you can fight, especially knowing the gravel slows you down that much more? Ward looks to the inside, gets on through. Oh, almost contact between the two.
That was incredibly close. I did say that corner was a bit of a crash or pass scenario, but somehow they've managed to keep in the same positions despite swapping around multiple times. They're going to be fighting again into the final corner here at Brands Hatch. A little bit of a switchback, going to get to the inside for Ward. Ward's going to have the inside into turn number 1, and we've also got Becker looking to push, giving quite a hard and firm push there that I'd be a bit worried if that was to break my front wing. However, going to be an additional switchback there for Pugh, using the angle of the corner really nicely, and it's going to be back up the inside.
Through at Druids, but is it done and dusted? Yes, just about. Oh, about a pixel or two overlapping, enough for Ward to try and send it down the hill. But using the AstroTurf on the outside, that's the track knowledge coming into play for Elliott Pugh. Your eyes show Ben Franklin, Brandon Nagelvoort have joined to make 3, now 5 in this fight for the final 2 steps of the podium. Ryan James Ward once again running down in through Pilgrim's Drop towards Hawthorne, and again forced to the outside. Elliott Pugh wants to have that inside tighter line. Longer way around, maybe some more speed though, and onto the grass, straddling the curb. Ward not done just yet though.
Wow, how they've not touched. I'm so surprised. Beautiful respect between the two English drivers. Going to be continuing to fight for these coming laps, and you see how powerful that draft is. Pugh's feeling the need to go into defensive into the penultimate corner. That's going to compromise Ward, and Ward's now going to be attacked by Becker. However, he does have the slipstream down to the final corner from Pugh. And
because there's no traffic really now for these drivers to be thinking about, they are losing so much time to those that have come in, taken a fast repair and gone back out onto track. There's no draft for Pugh at all. 3 minutes means we'll have 3 laps to go, you'd think, for these drivers. Down into turn 1 once more. Becker peeking to the inside, but Ward has it covered off. Nagelvoort has very much joined the party, rising up into Druids. No move in towards the uphill hairpin. You've got to think Ryan James Ward, if he's not making mistakes, has been the most aggressive of the field so far today.
Certainly looking to make some moves in that Guild Esports car, and looking back from Pugh's car, you can see the gap, and we've seen a mistake there from Ward, and that's going to massively compromise Becker on the exit as well. With the Becker and Franklin to push to try and get that advantage over Ward, but certainly it looks like Pugh's maybe got away now.
You can't make it 3 wide down that back straightaway, and so they just lose momentum. Running wide is Elliott Pugh, though. Fortunately, he's still just about out of drafting range, I believe. It's going to take some help, some work, some assistance between Ward, Becker, and Franklin to avoid tripping over each other to close that margin back up with now 2 laps to go. Bradbury is gone. Bradbury is 10 seconds clear in what will go down in the books as a dominant win after a dominant display in qualifying. It's now Ward that feels the urge to go defensive in towards the final corner, running towards the line with 2 laps still left to go.
Yeah, it looks like this has become a fight for third rather than second here, and Becker's going to be looking to maybe go a little bit aggressive. He'll be biding his time potentially as he sees a bit of traffic in the distance for Pugh. There is maybe one more chance for Ward to get back into that toe of Pugh and still have a chance maybe on the final lap, but if you leave it too long in Becker or Franklin's position, you just won't get a chance of the podium.
That is Gian Garrity, who's just left the pit lane, so that's the traffic, but also now drafting help for Elliott Pugh with now 90 seconds left on the clock. Wrapping out of Surtees, taking the long way around. Of course, the Indy layout would wrap itself back towards the final corner. We dive down through Pilgrim's Drop and in towards Hawthorns, Westfield, Dingledale, and Sheen once more. 9 tenths between second and third. It is closing, but maybe not closing fast enough. It will surely, though, come down to the final lap. Elliott Pugh will be hoping that Gian Garrity doesn't hold him up any longer in towards the final sector.
It all depends on how fast Garrity is. This looks like a hindrance at the time being, which is definitely costing him time. However, if that car in front of Garrity can provide a good enough tow, it'll make him fairly unpassable for Pugh.
And I think that's kind of why Pugh ducked out of the draft, and at the line, it's half a second back to those that have been able to bring the margin down. One more lap to go as Barney, the flagman, who has the white flag out. Down the hill through turn 1 at Paddock Hill they will go, up in towards Druids. Not close enough for a move, but it's now 4 tenths between second and third position. Ryan James Ward is on the hunt.
Pugh's starting to feel the pressure. 2 mistakes in 2 corners, dipping the wheel on the grass and gravel on the exit of 1 and 2. Looking, that gap is coming down. It's around about 4 tenths of a second as we head into the GP loop.
Looking rearwards over the shoulder from Garrity, who's feeding that draft, and Becker's made an opportunity to made a good opportunity to look around and get past Ryan James Ward before they even get down into Hawthorn. Chops the nose off the number 3 machine and gets the 3rd spot on the podium, and now runs wide. Great save on the grass, but it's now a fight for 3rd.
Becker ran wide, so did Ward. Ward ran wide onto the GP loop section. Becker ran wide just through the first fast right. It's going to be another mistake, though, for Becker.
And I think Elliott Pugh made a mistake as well. It's all as Ted Bradbury wraps his way to the line. A dominant win here in the Altus Esports number 2 at Brands Hatch in the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour. Who's going to grab second? Who's going to grab third? It looks like Elliott Pugh and Ryan James Ward have done just enough. It's Luca Becker and Ben Franklin, a drag race to the line, which Becker gets the best of. What a race at Brands Hatch. All these Formula 4 machines never disappoint, and they're not done with the fighting just yet.
Yeah, these Formula 4 machines produce such good racing. Not that much dirty air and a whole heap of drafting potential. So great racing there tonight.
We spent so much time focused up towards the front, but Peter de Hust gets in front of Simona Gabriel by a quarter of a second at the end. Timo Olivok, 12 positions gained, biggest mover to jump in front of Nika Kuru in the closing stages as well. So many drivers making sure that even though 20 minutes doesn't seem like it's a long race, that they persevered to get towards the end. That includes drivers that were involved in incidents, had to grab a fast repair, and Joey Zarkos across the line in 14th. David Onazol is going to come across the line in the 15th spot, and now just Sebastian Schmidt to wait to get towards the line as that number 18 machine heads out of the final corner. Seemingly relatively factory fresh as well in a tribute livery. Let's go ahead though and take a look at our race results so we can talk through what was a dramatic outing here at Brands Hatch. 10.5 seconds, dominant display for Ted Bradbury. After grabbing the pole, was able to break away and leave those to fight for second and third. It was Elliott Pugh and Ryan James Ward that did just enough, while Luca Becker and Ben Franklin ran their fight all the way to the line. Brandon Nagelvoort just about held on to that gaggle as well, clawing back onto them in the closing stages. Peter de Hus gets in front of Simone Gabriel, while Timur Olivok and Nico Kuru round out your top 10. Two drivers with double-digit gains on the day. Aaron Woolcock is also 12 positions gained for him, while Stephen Elson, Guy Robertson, Joey Zarkos, and then David Onozol, the rest of your top 15. Sebastian Schmidt was classified on the leading lap as well, but you could not say the same for the likes of Gian Garrity, Dylan Freckleton, Dietrich Marsman, or Alex Bailey, or very much in the used car lot. And as we continue to cycle through the results, it's Harry Hickton, Mac McFarquhar, and Istok Draco that round out the results. Word in chat, I think for Mac McFarquhar, is VR issues on the grid. What happened to him? Unfortunate that we didn't get to see him launch his way off from the line, but Brands Hatch put on plenty of fighting. What could we do to make things even more interesting next week? I tell you what, let's make our way, still in Europe, but over to the Styrian Mountains. And Will, it's over to the Red Bull Ring.
Done a bit of racing at the Red Bull Ring in my time, and that is going to be a track for the ultimate battle. There is a lot of straights in general at the Red Bull Ring, and a lot of passing opportunities. So it's going to be a fantastic race when we head over to the Red Bull Ring at 7 UTC. Don't want to miss it.
Don't want to miss it for sure. And of course, that means that for the second 4-week cycle of the regions, we, of course, will head to the Asia-Pacific region and to Twin Ring Motegi the week after that. Going to be really interesting to see how that all plays on out. If you're just joining us for the very first time on this FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour, don't forget that even though we break them up into regions so we can focus some of our attention on certain tracks, you can race in any region that you want, and if you're crazy enough, yes, you could do 32 races in this Formula 4 machine every single week. Spread out across 12 weeks, Will, that's 384 races. You probably have to get your heart checked if you did 384 races that were as intense as that.
384 races is certainly a lot, and I'm not sure I could quite deal with that, to be honest. I've only done about 560 in total. So if anyone does that, credit to them, but surely you need to get involved if you've got an iRacing subscription, and why not come and race in one of these series on a prime time? It's
always great to be able to jump our way through some iRacing official action here on what is now Wednesday night prime time for the final season of 2023, and we'll be back next week for what should be an exciting belt around the Styrian Mountains. For the entire team behind the scenes, though, at RaceSpotTV, thank you so much for joining us. Will Chadwick alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati. Brands Hatch never disappoints. Ted Bradbury dominant and on top, but ultimately it's us, the winners, leaving Brands Hatch another fascinating round of the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour here on iRacing.